It is our April finale. So, this is when the new chapter begins on going visible as who you actually are right now. It's been 4 weeks this April, the identity autopsy, the language trap, burning the old script, and you did the work. Or maybe you did some of it, or more of it than you actually expected to when you actually pressed play on week one. And now here we are, week four, the final week of April. And I want to ask you something before we get into anything else. What have you actually done with it? Because here's what I've watched happen a lot with people who do this kind of work, this internal work really, really well. They do the journal work, they do the chapter work, they find the old story, they understand the old story, they write the reframe, they declare the new chapter, and then nothing changes. Not because they didn't want to do the work, because they did the internal version and skipped the external version. So they kept showing up in every professional interaction as the person they were because it felt safer, because the new story was real in the journal, but hadn't really been tested in a room, right? So because going visible as who you're becoming before you're certain is a little scary. Before the evidence, it's kind of overwhelming. Before anyone has officially ratified your right to the new story, it is really the most uncomfortable move in all of reinvention. It's also the move that makes everything else stick. So, welcome back. Welcome to Too Late My Ass. I'm Faye Chappell. Again, this is the April finale. So, let's close this month properly. You're listening to Too Late My Ass, the podcast that exists because someone had to say it out loud. I'm Faye Chappell, and this show is for anyone who's been quietly wondering if they missed their window. Spoiler, you didn't. Your brain is still neuroplastic, your identity is still negotiable, and your second act, it's not a consolation prize, it's the whole damn point. Let's get into it. So, let's talk about the quick science, and I'll try to keep it fast this time, okay? There's a social psychologist in the 70s, and he discovered that a significant chunk of your self-concept is built through how other people see and respond to you. Not all of it, but enough to actually matter. So here's what it means for reinvention. So when you're a senior executive at a large organization, the environment was constantly confirming that identity, right? Your title, your colleagues, the culture, every interaction was feeding your brain the exact same data. This is who you are. This is what you want to do. This is your category that you belong to. That self concept barely had to do any maintenance at all because the environment was doing it for you. But when you left, what happened? The confirmation stopped. And so the new identity, the second act version, the consultant, the builder, whatever this chapter is that you came up with, doesn't yet have that social density behind it. So it exists in the journal, in the internal work, in your own growing clarity, but it hasn't confirmed by the world. It hasn't been confirmed. Okay. So the world hasn't said it out loud for you. And the brain, well, the brain, which treats that social feedback as important data about reality, it notices the gap. And what it does with this, it treats the new identity as hasn't been verified yet, right? So it's unverified. It's kind of like you don't have the blue check mark on Twitter or X, I guess. So it's still pending external confirmation before it starts feeling real. So this is why the just keep your head down and do the work approach to reinvention kind of has a ceiling, right? Because the internal work is necessary, but it is not sufficient. So the new story needs to leave the journal you've been writing it in. It needs to actually be tested in rooms in the world. It needs people to see it, to respond to it, and confirm that it's real. It's not aspirational. It's not just a transition, but it's current, it's operational, it's who you are right now. And right now, most of the people in your professional world are still relating to the old version. Not because they're trying to keep you small, right? Because you haven't given them anything new to work with. The signal you've been sending is still old. So we need to update that signal, right? Visibility actually is not an audience strategy. It's not a content calendar. It's not a rebrand. This is simpler and more uncomfortable than any of that. Visibility, the kind that actually consolidates that your new identity, is the people in your actual professional life relating to the current version of you instead of the archived one. So that's it. Not strangers on the internet, the colleagues who still have a fixed picture of who you are from 5 years from now. The professional contents, right? The contacts that you have on your LinkedIn who think of you primarily through the lens of the role you've left. So the rooms you still walk into and introduce yourself with that old language out of habit, because the new language still feels overwhelming and maybe you feel a little scared still. But that's where social confirmation really needs to happen. So now let's think about it. There's a specific mistake that most people make about timing of all of this. And I want to really address it here directly, and stay with me because this is a very, very important episode, because most people are waiting for the destination before they go visible, right? They're waiting until the news story is undeniably real and that claiming it doesn't feel like a risk, right? Until the revenue proves the fact that you're a consultant, or until the audience validates the creative work you're doing, until the track record is airtight. But here's the problem with that plan. The destination is partly created by going visible before you actually get there. So the clients come after you've been showing up as the expert, not before, right? The rooms that confirm your authority, they open after you've shown them in who you are, right? The evidence you're waiting for to justify the claim is partly generated by truly making that claim yourself now. So if you're waiting for enough proof to feel safe before going visible, you're waiting for something that requires going visible to actually produce it. So that's the loop. And you don't get out of it by waiting harder, right? So remember that line. You don't get out of it by waiting harder, okay? But why is it so hard? So let's think about it. There's 3 reasons. There's actual reasons, not just you need more confidence. That's kind of crap. One is you got no institutional backing. So when you have a senior title, the institution was doing most of the credibility work for you, right? You could walk into the room with a title that had pre-credentialed access to you, right? So before you even said a word, people already had you in a category. They knew how much authority to assign to you, right? But in the second act, it's gone. So you carry the credibility all by yourself, or it doesn't get carried at all, which means every room requires you to establish all that context from scratch in real time without the safety net of that org chart that you've been clinging to. And it's way, way more exposed. And of course, it's way, way harder, right? So that whole credential reach habit, right? Reaching back to those corporate years as the primary authority, that's that direct response to this exposure. And it's not a flaw. It's not an adaptation that made complete sense in, a different context. The context changed. The adaptation did not. So 2, what else is hard about this? Going visible mid-process feels like kind of like deficiency, right? Because the culture tells us to only show up publicly when we have results, when we can report the win, not the attempt, right? When the work is finished, it's finished enough to actually defend it, which creates this gorgeous little trap, right? You can't get the results without going visible, but you won't go visible until you have the results. So you're waiting indefinitely for evidence that could have been generated months ago. Think about that. And then finally, 3, there's this whole authentication paradox, right? So it's basically the feeling that you haven't quite earned the right to claim that new identity publicly yet, right? that there's this certification process, and you guys know what I think about certification, right? That new identity isn't official until some threshold gets crossed. But there is no threshold. There is no certification process. No one is coming to officially ratify this new chapter that you're in, right? The claiming is what creates your arrival. So the decision to show up as a person that you're becoming is what moves that person from aspirational to operational, not the other way around. So I ran this paradox for longer than I probably care to admit, doing generally good work inside our inner circle, in the podcast, with clients, and still in professional rooms outside of those contexts, I was hedging a little bit, right? Still reaching back to those corporate years as the real credential. So I was still framing what I was building as something I was building towards rather than something I was doing. And the shift, it wasn't really a revelation. It was more of I would say, a decision. It was a decision to stop letting that whole authentication paradox determine my behavior. To use the present tense version specifically in moments when it kind of felt uncomfortable, right? Not because I've resolved that paradox, but because I stopped basically giving it kind of a vote, right? So we need to make 3 moves this week to get going on the visibility of who you are right now. Specific moves this week, any one of them counts. So write them down or listen to this podcast many times until you do one. So move 1 is I want you to update one piece of written self-description and leave it there. Could be a LinkedIn headline, could be an email signature, could be the about section of whatever platform you use most professionally. But I want you to pick one, the one that still has the most, that clearly belongs to the old chapter. Let's put it that way, right? And rewrite it. 20 minutes max. Don't spend time on it, but make sure it's in present tense. No credential reach prefix, no transitional hedge, right? No, I used to be X, but now I'm exploring Y, right? Who you are, what you do, who you do it for right now. And I want you to publish it. And then here's the important part, actually leave it there. Because the instinct is to edit it back to safety, right? Because that's going to arrive to you, right? And it will feel like you're overclaiming, that feeling that authentication paradox is doing its last thing, right? So don't let it win. That description is doing social confirmation work every time someone reads it. So let it work. Can we do that? For those of you in our inner circle, we started doing LinkedIn work last week. We're continuing each and every month to add to that, to make sure your story is good. So for everyone, I want to make sure that that move 1 is an easy one. Okay. So if you're still not a little uncomfortable about putting it on LinkedIn or any other platform, you can go to move 2, which is having one direct professional conversation as the current version of you. So one person in your professional world. This week, a conversation where you describe your current work in present tense, without that 20-year prefix, without the transitional hedge, without the apology that sneaks in before the claim, okay? Just here's what I do, here's who I work with, here's what they get. Don't announce that you're doing anything differently. Just do it and notice what happens, because the room can almost certainly hold it for you, right? You're the one who's been doubting whether it can. The room has been ready. You just haven't been ready to let it be ready. So move 3, if you're still on the fence, you don't want to do the LinkedIn, you don't want to change your bio, you're afraid to have a conversation with somebody. So move 3. So I want you to publish one piece of current chapter content. Could be a LinkedIn post, could be a Substack, could be a comment somewhere professional, somewhere where the current story exists in the public record, right? So you can just talk about your current version of you in the present tense, right? So the specificity matters more than the platform. Something only the current version of you could have written from the current work, from the specific people you're building towards, right? The specificity is the social confirmation signal. So if you do generic industry commentary, it doesn't really work for the new identity. Current chapter specific content only. That one's a little easier, right? At least a little easier to do for most of us. There are 3 moves. I want you to start with any one of them. All 3 are a meaningful close to April. Okay. So let's get a little specific about the midlife specific, I guess. A little quick one, specifically for people who came to this work from a significant corporate background, because the scripts are still running in your head right now. That credential reach, that downgrade, that I'm in a bit of a transition, and those were not failures. They were adaptive. They were the correct moves for the environments that had specific ideas about who is allowed to claim what authority and when. You were smart to learn them because they worked, but now your environment has changed and the scripts didn't notice, right? So what you're bringing to the second act, the 30 years of accumulated experience, the lived experiences at real stakes, a specific understanding of what actually matters that you literally cannot buy or study your way into, it's not a deficit. It is one of the most powerful foundations for a second act, but only if it's claimed in the present tense, not as legacy, not as a former capability. Mainly as this is what I am, this is what I know, this is what I do, this is who I do it for right now in this chapter without any preface. Okay. So that's a whole move. I want you to claim that current version in present tense, right? Without the preface. So that's visibility, and that's what closes April. Remember, 4 weeks. We did it all, right? We did it all in 4 weeks. And 4 weeks of asking something specific, not inspirational, not motivational, the actual quiet courage of looking honestly at the story you've been living and choosing a different one. You did it slowly, maybe a little imperfectly, maybe inconsistently, but you did it. So if you did this month, even some of it, even the parts that felt incomplete, you change something in your structure. Something May will build on, and June will build even further. So what we do each week here in the podcast, in our in Spark, in Substack, and in the Inner Circle is building each and every week. So reinvention isn't really a decision. It's this: 4 weeks, then 4 more, then however many more it takes until your new story feels more like home than the old one. And that's why we started the Inner Circle. So a lot of people in our community are doing just that. So May is actually an identity upgrade. We're going to move from excavation, which we just did, to construction. So everything April found, May builds with it. And I genuinely can't wait because I have so much more to show you guys. This week, you just do the 3 moves. That's it. Especially move 1, update that written description and leave it there. That one works while you're not even watching, so let it work. And if anything from this month helped, if any of these episodes gave you the language for something that you've been feeling without the words for it, then please, please, please send it to one person who actually needs it. You know exactly who that is. And they've been circling this work without quite finding the door. So send them the door. That's who we are. Remember, it is not too late. It has never been too late. Too late, my ass. And that's a wrap on this one. If something landed for you today, sit with it. That's your nervous system updating its software. Let it run. And if you want to get deeper, The Long Game is our daily ritual app, 15 minutes a day, built around the move, mind, and meaning framework. It's the daily practice behind everything we talk about on this show. And you can find it at tlmalonggame.com. And if you're ready to be in the room, the Inner Circle is where we do the real work. Monthly masterclasses, identity challenges, and a community of people who are done playing small. Join us at toolatemyass.com/inner circle. Until next week, stay rebellious. I'll see you then.